The morning shift at the Galactic Council's Communication Center began like any other. Senior Operator Vexathani scrolled through the incoming message queue, her scaled hands moving with the easy rhythm of decades of routine. 347 reports. Trade updates from the vector shipping lanes. Patrol confirmations from the Zenturi border. Scientific data packets from the KE research stations. Even ceremonial broadcasts from the Ashanti worlds. But as she scanned the endless flow of galactic chatter, something unsettled her. A quiet absence. It took her 2 passes to realize what was missing. There were no human transmissions. For as long as Vexathani had worked here, humans had been reliable participants in the galaxy's daily rhythm. Reports from patrol vessels. Diplomatic updates. Science briefings. Humanity had a presence in every corner of Council life. Yet, for 18 hours, their channels had fallen silent. At first, she flagged it as a technical error. Solar storms disrupted communications all the time. Viruses sometimes crashed entire networks. The humans would probably flood the channels later, apologizing for delays and resending every lost packet. But they didn't. 3 days later, silence still held. During the weekly security briefing, War Commander Korak of the Zenturi brought it up. His reptilian features were composed but edged with unease. Human patrol vessels have failed to check in along our shared borders, he said. This creates security gaps in the monitoring networks we negotiated. Minister Killian of the Vector leaned forward, her insectoid mandibles clicking thoughtfully. Several human merchant ships are overdue. Their cargo manifests carried rare earths. Our buyers are displeased. Ashanti Pontiff Yereth adjusted her ceremonial robes and offered a different interpretation. Perhaps the humans are engaged in some religious silence. We must respect their mysteries. The KE representative, speaking through a flat, mechanical synthesizer, dismissed that idea with cold numbers. Probability of simultaneous network failure across all human systems, 0.003%. Chancellor Vorak of the Drexen, skin gleaming under the chamber lights, gave his own speculation, military exercises. A communication blackout would explain everything. Only one person at the table felt the weight of dread in her chest. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, humanity's lone representative at the council station. I've been trying to reach Earth for 4 days, she admitted. Emergency beacons should at least acknowledge. They don't. She forced her voice to remain steady. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. We'll continue to monitor. But privately, Elena knew the truth. Human communication protocols had redundancies upon redundancies. Silence was impossible, unless it was deliberate. Weeks passed. The Council's concern shifted from alarm to annoyance. Humans had always been reliable mediators, peacekeepers, traders. Their sudden absence created inconvenience. Yet the galaxy adapted. The Zenturi increased their border patrols. The Vector rerouted trade. The Ashanti declared prayers. The KE began analyzing the silence itself as a research problem. And the Drexen, ever opportunistic, began filing territorial claims over unmonitored space. For Elena, the nightmare deepened. Her desperate transmissions vanished unanswered into the void. She sent them anyway, each day, knowing no one was listening. She documented every shift, every claim, every violation. But she was a ghost at the table, representing a people who no longer replied. Months became years. Humanity was classified as communication disrupted pending investigation. A phrase that sounded official but meant little. The galaxy moved on. Trade agreements flowed without human mediators slowing the pace with ethics and long-term considerations. Border disputes escalated into quick resolutions, without human peacekeepers urging caution. Scientific projects advanced faster without human oversight committees. Even the Ashanti spread their faith more aggressively without human objections about cultural preservation. It turned out galactic affairs worked just fine, perhaps even better, without humanity. Meanwhile, in the deep dark between the stars, hidden far from Council sensors, something else stirred. Construction fleets worked in uncharted systems. Massive installations grew around nameless worlds. Unknown signals moved between bases with encryption far beyond KE's comprehension. Something vast and patient was unfolding. But the Council remained blind. 8 years after the silence began, War Commander Korak stood in Zenturi High Command, reviewing a star map of territories. For the first time in his career, he saw opportunity instead of stalemate. The Kalas system, rich in minerals, had been frozen under human mediation. But no human ships responded now. No diplomatic oversight. Deploy 5th and 7th battle groups, Korak ordered. Seize all mining facilities. Any non-Zenturi vessel is to be turned away. By force. His aide hesitated. What of Council diplomacy? Korak laughed, low and thunderous. What diplomacy? The humans are gone. The Council barks but has no teeth. This is ours. Similar calculations spread across the galaxy. The Vector Consortium saw profits rising as human fair trade restrictions vanished. They began employing pirates instead of suppressing them. The Ashanti declared humanity's disappearance a divine sign, freeing them to pursue forced conversions with holy zeal. The KE quietly began reverse engineering human technologies left behind. What had once been shared in trust was now stripped and weaponized. And the Drexen signed decrees declaring 17 human colonies, temporarily under protection, a legal fiction for annexation. Piece by piece, the galaxy dismantled what humanity had built. And still, from Earth and the colonies, no word came. Elena watched helplessly from her council post. Her voice carried no weight. Her reports went unread. Her protests were ignored. The council president reassured her with smooth words, "We respect human claims, Dr. Rodriguez. But without human presence, other species must ensure stability." She knew what that meant. Nothing was temporary. Every empire was carving away humanity's legacy. And she alone witnessed the unraveling of decades of fragile peace. For you listening now, imagine this. An entire civilization, a species that once mediated wars, patrolled trade lanes, and questioned the ethics of every galactic decision, vanishing overnight. No distress calls. No wreckage. No explanation. Would you see absence as tragedy? Or as opportunity? The galaxy chose opportunity. But in the silence, in the unseen dark, something else was forming. Not absence. Not weakness. Preparation. And when humanity returned, they would not return as they had left. If you're still with me, tell me this in the comments. What do you think humanity was building in the dark? Was it weapons, knowledge, or something even greater? And don't forget, subscribe if you want to follow the unfolding mystery of HFY, humanity's return. Because this is only the beginning. For nearly 2 decades, the galaxy learned to live without humanity. The Council archives called it the adjustment period. Others labeled it the silence. The Vector merchants spoke of it in profit margins, while the Zenturi generals measured it in annexed systems. To the Ashanti, it was a prophecy fulfilled. But for the galaxy's common citizens, the freighter captains, the outpost workers, the farmers on distant moons, life without humanity felt stranger than words could describe. Because humanity had not only participated in the galactic order. They had shaped it. Their presence was a quiet constant. Always questioning. Always interfering. Always asking whether progress came with a cost. Without them, that moral weight lifted. And at first, everyone celebrated. The Zenturi expanded fastest. Whole sectors once locked in treaties were seized overnight. Where human patrols once monitored borders, Zenturi warships now prowled. Mining facilities changed hands under the glare of plasma cannons. The Vector turned piracy into policy. Without human objections, shadow fleets slipped into trade routes. Profits soared. Markets thrived on stolen goods. The Ashanti claimed revelation. They declared humanity's absence as divine confirmation that the gods had chosen them. Their missionaries arrived on every world, demanding conversion with the fervor of conquest. The Drexen grew boldest. They did not just seize human colonies, they renamed them. Streets were repaved with Drexen architecture. Monuments were torn down and replaced with statues of Drexen heroes. Children in schools recited oaths to the Drexen Empire, their human heritage erased by decree. And the KE, they studied. Cold, meticulous, relentless. Human research archives left unsecured on forgotten servers became treasure troves. The KE built weapons and algorithms from fragments of human knowledge, dissecting every trace with mechanical precision. Every empire filled the silence with ambition. But then, quietly, almost invisibly, the silence began to shift. It started small. A Zenturi battle fleet en route to secure the Kalas sector transmitted a routine check-in. Their signal cut mid-sentence. No wreckage was found. No distress beacons. 400,000 tons of warships, gone. The Vector's trade network suffered sudden disruptions. Pirate lords who once thrived on sanctioned raiding vanished. Convoys that left port never reached destination. Routes that had been predictable for decades became haunted by absence. An Ashanti missionary fleet entered a former human colony, intent on purification. They transmitted sermons for 39 hours. Then silence. Their ships were later discovered, drifting intact, crews missing. The holy relics they carried, gone. The KE noticed something more subtle. Data fragments. Broken packets scattered across the quantum relay net. Not natural noise. Not random. But patterned. Almost like fingerprints pressed against glass. The Drexen ignored the signs longest. They had claimed entire human sectors, enforcing occupation with brute force. But their governors reported strange resistance, sabotage of supply depots, vanishing garrisons, whispered rumors of shadows moving at night. They dismissed it as rebellion. Until whole garrisons began disappearing too. The council reconvened in emergency session. War Commander Korak demanded retribution. This is human insurgency. We should strike their colonies with overwhelming force. Burn the silence away. The Vector minister twitched her mandibles in disdain. Impossible. No fleets remain. No colonies answer. The humans are gone. What we face is something else. The Ashanti pontiff declared it divine punishment. The gods have hidden humanity among the stars to test us. Our failures invite their wrath. The KE representative did not argue theology. It simply projected patterns of the strange digital fragments onto the chamber wall. These are not natural. They resemble encryption keys. Keys of human origin. And finally, all eyes turned to Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She was older now. Tired. But her voice carried the same quiet certainty it always had. I told you the silence was not an ending, she said. It was preparation. Humanity never left. They were watching. Waiting. And now, they are returning. Return. The word rippled through the council chamber like a tremor. But this was not the humanity the council remembered. Not the idealists who mediated trade. Not the peacekeepers who patrolled neutral zones. Not the scientists who asked uncomfortable questions. This humanity had vanished for 20 years, leaving no trace but emptiness. And in that emptiness, something new had grown. No one knew what form it would take. Rumors spread faster than fact. On the Zenturi homeworld, soldiers whispered of ghost fleets seen in deep space. Vast ships without registration codes, moving silently along forgotten lanes. Among the vector, traders swore of human voices whispering through malfunctioning comms, guiding them away from pirate havens moments before they vanished. The Ashanti heard sermons interrupted by words they claimed were human, though distorted beyond recognition, warnings that bled into prophecy. The KE collected fragments. Symbols hidden in static. Algorithms embedded in chaos. They began to fear that humanity was not only returning physically, but digitally, rewriting the very foundations of the network. And the Drexen? Their occupied colonies rebelled in unison. Not with guns. Not with fleets. But with silence. Cities emptied overnight. Shipyards abandoned. Entire planets gone dark, leaving Drexen garrisons stranded in dead cities where nothing stirred. It was not warfare. It was erasure. Dr. Rodriguez spent her nights staring at the stars from her council quarters. She felt the truth more than she could prove it. Humanity had not been destroyed. Humanity had not been conquered. Humanity had chosen silence. But why? The question gnawed at her. What force had driven her people into hiding, into secrecy so deep it consumed entire civilizations? What had they seen? And most of all, what were they building in the dark? For you listening now, imagine what that would feel like. Not invasion. Not negotiation. But the slow, cold realization that the silence you thought was absence was actually a presence too vast to comprehend. Imagine waking each day knowing that somewhere, in the unseen corners of the galaxy, your species was quietly rearranging reality itself, and not telling you why. Would you fear them? Would you welcome them? Or would you pray they never turned their eyes toward you? Question for you, listener, if humanity disappeared tomorrow and returned 20 years later, would you trust them? Or would you see them as strangers, something older and far more dangerous than the people you remembered? Because the galaxy is asking that very question now. And the answer is coming. The galaxy had grown used to silence. But silence can be a weapon. And when it breaks, it does so like shattering glass. It began with the Drexen. Entire garrisons posted on former human colonies reported strange movements at night. Not insurgents. Not rebels. Shadows. Silent machinery buried in the soil, rising from centuries of slumber. The Drexen attempted eradication. Bombardments, firestorms, orbital strikes. Yet the more they burned, the more the ground itself seemed to resist. Cities they thought conquered revealed foundations not of human design, but something older. And then the cities vanished. Not destroyed, gone. Whole urban centers, dismantled stone by stone, leaving only empty plains where thriving colonies had once stood. The Drexen fled. The Zenturi fared no better. Their fleets, once swollen from conquest, began disappearing in strange patterns. Not annihilated, disassembled. Crews awoke to find entire decks stripped bare, their warships gutted in silence. Black box records captured no intruders. No alarms. Just absence. The Zenturi called it human retaliation. But the truth was harder to face. The dismantling followed no human pattern. It was something deeper, colder, and infinitely patient. The vector whispered of ghost markets. Stations once filled with black market traders reappeared empty, the goods neatly stacked as though awaiting new owners. But in the shadow of every stall, inscriptions appeared. Symbols no vector language recognized. The Ashanti screamed prophecy. The gods walk again, their pontiff declared, though his voice trembled. For the first time in their long history, the Ashanti feared their gods were not gods at all. The KE simply observed. They compared the symbols etched into abandoned stations with fragments found in corrupted data streams. Their conclusion was unsettling in its simplicity. These are not human. The council called another emergency session. The chamber was silent except for the quiet breathing of those present. Even War Commander Korak did not roar this time. Instead, all turned to Dr. Elena Rodriguez. She did not speak at first. She simply placed a series of projected images on the chamber wall. Cities vanishing. Fleets gutted. Symbols etched in light. And then she said, "We were not preparing for you. We were preparing for them." The words landed like a thunderclap. Humanity had not hidden in silence out of fear of the Council, nor even of the empires that sought to enslave them. Their absence had been purposeful, methodical, and vast in scale. They had gone into the dark to dig deeper than anyone dared. To unearth something buried in forgotten archives, in ruins no one claimed, in the faint whispers of civilizations that had burned out before the Council's oldest races were even born. They called them the architects. Beings not of myth, but of record. Fragments of technology far beyond anything known. Structures half buried in stars, dormant constructs on lifeless moons. Traces of design that suggested not just empire, but authorship, of reality itself. And humanity, in their silence, had listened. They had learned. They had begun to understand what even the KE feared to calculate. The architects were not gone. They were waiting. And humanity had positioned itself as the first to answer when they stirred. The galaxy trembled as whispers spread. Some claimed humanity had allied with the architects. That the vanishing fleets, the dismantled colonies, the etched symbols were signs of a new covenant. Others believed the opposite, that humanity had awoken something they could not control, and now the galaxy would pay the price. The Ashanti broke apart in civil war, half their priesthood calling humanity divine messengers, the other half branding them heretics. The Zenturi fell into paranoia, executing entire crews suspected of human collaboration. The Drexen demanded proof, but their own soldiers refused to fight. They had seen too much. And the KE? They built models. Cold, mathematical, unfeeling. Every projection ended in the same result, collapse. Not just of empires. Not just of species. But of order itself. And still, the question remained. What did humanity want? The first true sign came at the edge of the Perseus Veil. A dead star system long abandoned for its unstable gravity wells lit up with impossible energy signatures. Council observers dispatched probes. None returned. But the transmissions reached them. Not words. Not images. Blueprints. Schematics that defied physics, mapping constructs the size of entire star systems. Engines not for travel, but for rewriting spacetime itself. It was not an attack. It was an announcement. Humanity had awakened something. And they had taken command of it. Dr. Rodriguez, watching from her chamber, whispered what no one wanted to say aloud. They are no longer just human. They are something else. Something older. Something new. For those of you listening now, ask yourself. What happens when the oppressed rise not in vengeance, but in revelation? When a species does not seek to reclaim its chains, but instead to dissolve the very forge that made them? Would you resist them? Would you join them? Or would you simply pray you survived long enough to see what came next? Because the galaxy now stood at that threshold. And in the distance, beyond the veil, the first structures of the architects lit the void with cold fire, rebuilt, reawakened, reimagined by human hands. The silence was over. The architects had returned. And humanity was holding the key. Final question for you, listener. If your species uncovered the tools to reshape reality itself, would you use them to protect? To conquer? Or to transcend? Because humanity has already made their choice. And the galaxy will live, or die, with the consequences.